Now today I'm going to talk again about gold. This time it's kind of filling you in on all the things that you need to know to make a good judgment about whether the price of gold is going to go up, as most people think it's going to, or go down like a stone. And the picture I've chosen behind me is quite appropriate because in fact it's a dragon and he's got a pile of gold there. Not a very big pile, but hey, he's obviously not a very rich dragon. So, gold. Gold, 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 which is the song that the dwarves sang in Terry Pratchett's books. It's all they used to like to sing about, and sometimes I get that feeling too, that everyone is obsessed with gold. People have been obsessed with gold ever since the dawn of human history. And the reason why is it is incorruptible. It's not quite technically true, but in practice, with things that are available to us every day, you can't make gold corrode. You can melt it. But when you melt it, it doesn't turn into something else, like some things do. It doesn't suddenly grow a heap of slag on the top of it like iron does. It's just gold. So there's only one isotope of gold. There's only one type of gold found in nature. Other isotopes exist. They're slightly radioactive. As a result, they all go back to the stable type of gold that we all know. The nearest one is got something like 196 days half-life. So essentially gold is gold is gold. There's no real different types of gold. Although, as we'll see, some people charge more for certain types of gold, but that's more of a marketing thing. So the next thing we're going to talk about really is what types of gold are mined and how scarce is gold. Well, I've got some bad news for you. The bad news is that gold isn't scarce at all. What are you saying? Why is it so valuable? Why is it so pricey if gold isn't at all scarce? Well, there's a hell of a lot of it on planet Earth. In fact, scientists agree that where gold came from was an exploding star, or perhaps several, a few billion years ago, and this star produced various asteroids which were absolutely laden with heavy metals such as gold, silver, tin, lead and so on, including the uranium we used to try and blow ourselves up with. And these asteroids hit the Earth when it was still molten. And these metals being very heavy, the first thing that happens is they sink to the centre of the Earth. So the core of the Earth, the theory goes, is full of these heavy metals. And by looking at the different percentages of abundances of metals that are found in volcanic rocks, scientists have come to some conclusions. Now, one of those conclusions is that the amount of gold in the core, if we were able to extract it all, would actually be enough to produce a layer 1.5 feet thick. That's about 450 millimetres in metric money, all over the surface of the Earth. And that is all over. That's seas, land, everything. And obviously the price of gold would be cheaper than the price of sand. But don't worry, because we can't actually get hold of it. And that is really what makes gold a scarcity in human terms. It's very common, but we can't get it. Now, what types of gold we can find all come from deep within the Earth. And they're either brought up by meteorite action, like the meteorite comes down and whack, creates a crater, and that pulls material from deep within the Earth, and that material contains gold. And this is in fact how the world's biggest gold mines in South Africa. That's how they got their gold. This is known, and the meteorite that created the whole basin in which this gold is found is named. But gold that's found elsewhere in the world is mostly brought up by volcanic action and tectonic action. Now, volcanic action is obvious where you've got a volcano and it spews up lava, and a certain percentage of that lava is going to be gold. A very small percentage, but it's there. Now, that gold then sinks to the bottom of the molten rock. So it might be a few hundred meters deep. And the gold that we find in the place of gold and the gold nuggets is in actual fact what's eroded out of these mountains over millions of years. Water and the elements have just simply washed the rock away, and the gold's come with it in little flakes and chunks and nuggets and so on and so forth. So that is really volcanic gold. Now, along the seabed, there are in fact splits between the continents, and where these splits are, they're called tectonic ridges, and in the middle of them there's a big fault line which oozes magma all the time, and that should also contain gold, and we don't really know if it does because we've never managed to mine it. There's also an area in Iceland, for example, which has similar long straight line faults, and likewise, because it's under hundreds of feet of very tough basalt volcanic rock, it's not economic to mine. It's not close enough to the surface, it's not easy enough to get hold of gold at its current price. And another type of gold, which is the most common type of gold that's mined, is just simply gold that's dissolved in rock. This gold was brought up volcanically, or was brought up by churning action of a meteorite hitting the earth, and it mixed with molten rock, and the particles are very, very tiny, very, very fine. To give you an idea, there is a mine in Wales in the UK where they have to dig out 63 tonnes of ground to get 1 ounce of gold. Now, in a lot of places that wouldn't be an economical proposition. The reason that Welsh gold is economical is because, for historical reasons, they are able to market this gold at nearly 5 times the price of regular gold, because English monarchs have used it, and we all know what us English are like about our monarchs. But anyway, so it goes. So there's normal mines, they wouldn't be able to live on those sort of figures. A normal mine, you'd be looking at anywhere between 10 tonnes and 25 tonnes of rock and ore to get 1 ounce of gold. It's still a hell of a lot of work, but nowhere near as much work as the Welsh put in. So let's have a look at some different types of gold, and we'll talk about it. Off we go. So here you have the whole thing, the way it started, huge gold nuggets. And doubtless at one time, thousands of years ago, you could wander around the earth, and if you were very lucky you'd pick one of these up. This gentleman found this with a metal detector. This is a 12-ounce gold nugget. This is what a large gold nugget looks like. It's not particularly shiny, but it is, trust me, it is gold. This is more like what the American prospectors would find in streams, and you can actually find this in streams today in England, in Cornwall, in Wales, in Scotland, anywhere there's volcanic rocks, and this is called placer gold. And this has been eroded out of the mountains by the water in the stream and carried miles, maybe 50 miles away from its original source. And usually this is panned for, or They use some sort of water sluice or water method, and it's quite an easy way really of finding gold. But if you follow this back to its source, you'll find gold ore. And this is the kind of stuff that you would crush down and chemically process to extract the gold, most of which is very fine. And here's another type of gold. This is crystalline gold. Now this is an example of gold that's brought up using the hydrothermal processes from deep underground, and you can see the white matrix of calcite in which the gold is found. Now even more beautiful is wire gold, and this is exactly the same, it's just different conditions, and the gold forms wires inside the crystal, and you can still see some of the crystal there in this sample, but this type of gold looks absolutely stunning. And now you've got the boring gold. This is how most of the world's gold is mined, and to give you some idea, that truck in the centre of the picture there is about the size of a house. It is huge. The mine itself is enormous, and there are open cast mines around like this all over the world, the biggest being in South Africa, and this is New Zealand. There's mines like this in China, Russia, America, you name it. If there's a lot of gold being mined, this is the way they do it. Now there's a third type of gold there. I didn't really talk very much about that because I wanted you to see it first because it looks so amazing. That's the wire gold, or crystalline gold as it's called. And this is produced deep within the earth, and where you've got big water deposits, we didn't used to think actually that there was very much water down there, but it turns out there is. There's actually more fresh water down there inside the earth than there is water in all of the Earth's oceans. Now, a lot of this water is under huge pressure and is subject to enormous temperatures. I mean, when we think of water, we think of a kettle. When we think of hot water, we think of it steaming away there. If we've worked in industry, we might even think of a steam boiler, which is superheated steam at maybe 400 degrees centigrade. But a geothermal vent with water in it is to one of these things like a nuclear bomb is to a hand grenade. It's really a totally different beast. You're talking about water that's at temperatures that will melt gold, that will melt silver, and it will also erode away an awful lot of minerals. So you've got this mineral soup down there which contains gold and a lot of other metals, and when there's an earthquake or a tectonic shift and cracks are produced in the Earth's crust that extend downwards for tens of kilometres, then this water can be forced up into the cracks in a hydrothermal eruption. Now, hydrothermal eruptions on a very small scale we see in geysers like Old Faithful at Yellowstone Park, but these are miniature. These are tiny little things, relatively surface things, compared to what has happened in the Earth's past. And this dissolved chemical and metal soup, which has got a lot of calcium in, tends to solidify into what we call mineral calcite, which is found all over the world in places where there's volcanic action and cracks in the ground. Basically, you find veins of this mineral, and it nearly invariably contains metals of some sort, and very often gold. And it's where most of the world's gold really comes from and really sits. Now, the mine of 49er in the States that everyone thinks of, your gold rush miner, the ones who actually went underground in these mines with the little trains and all the rest of it, they were mining this crystalline gold they were taking calcite out of the mines, they were bashing it around to get rid of the actual calcium and other minerals, and they get left with gold. Also, obviously, they'll from time to time find gold nuggets. This is where the gold has succeeded in concentrating itself, because if you put two pieces of gold next to each other and you heat them up, then they flow together to make one piece of gold. And this obviously would happen underground from time to time and create large lumps that we call nuggets. And also placer gold. Now, placer gold is very often it's this calcite that's been eroded out of the mountain, and it's been knocked around by other rocks, it's been kicked about, it's been washed down rivers and so on and so forth, until what you get at the end of it is a bunch of gold flakes that have been smeared out by the action of rocks hitting the gold over and over again, because gold is a very ductile metal. And this really is what we call placer gold, and sometimes you find some wire gold, crystalline gold inside it with the placer gold, which is a clue that in reality it all started at crystalline gold, but chemically we can't really tell because all gold's the same. So how much gold do we actually mine a year? Well, the whole world in 2011, which is the last year we have reasonably reliable figures for, mined 2,770 tonnes. Now, that's how much people admit they mine. We know there's a lot of countries that mine more than they say they do. One of them being Brazil, which has an awful lot of gold mines and doesn't really export much of it. One of them being China, which, if you add up the surface area of all of their open cast gold mines and sort of try and work out what they're mining, it comes out to a lot different figure than what they admit to. But anyway, 2,770 tonnes, and that was when all the mines in the world were working flat out. That is when gold was between $1,600 and $1,900 an ounce. But now, when the price of gold has gone down to $1,300 an ounce, 20% of those mines, or more even, perhaps, have closed, because they're either not economical or not so economical. So the amount of gold being mined now per year with gold at $1,300 is estimated to be around about 2,200 tonnes. Now obviously we mine a lot more gold nowadays than we used to. To give you an idea, in all of human history, right since the day dot, it's been worked out that around about 175,000 tonnes has been taken out of the earth. All these tonnes are metric tonnes, so that's 1,000 kilos in a tonne. And due to the density of gold, although 175,000 tonnes sounds like a lot, it's only a cube 21 metres on the side, about the size of a really large house. So it's not really all that much in terms of volume, is it? So what is all this gold used for? Well, we use gold in industry, and we use it in industry a lot. It's used for plating things that we don't want to corrode. That's what it's used for in electronics. It's used during some chemical processes, and I'm going to say that all the gold that's used in industry is gone. It's gone forever. So that's 10% of what we mine. That's at the moment 200 tonnes a year that goes. The reason why is it's plated too thinly. You're talking about a couple of angstroms of gold, which is twice the length of the wavelength of light, and possibly tiny, just a few atoms thick there, which is not worth recovering. even in those quantities, because it's distributed, the costs of recovering it would be horrendous compared to the value of the gold. So that's industrial usage. How much do you think is used on jewellery? Try 50%. And half of that goes to one country, half of it goes to India. So 50% is used in jewellery. Now, India is a special case because nearly all of their good jewellery is solid gold. But the rest of the world, they tend to plate things, which is why the rest of the world uses less gold. And once again, that gold in reality is lost. It wears away. You're looking at a plated coating that's a few microns thick. Even solid gold wears away. You look at someone's wedding ring. If they've been married for 50 years and you ask them, they'll tell you that a lot of that gold is gone. If that gold was any good, if it was 18 or 24 karat gold, then that gold has worn away a lot. So tons and tons and tons of gold every year wears away, gets disappears. So gold is getting used up all the time. And there is a finite amount of gold that we can get hold of. And all of this causes certain people, especially some of the online pundits, to turn around and say the price of gold is going to not only go up, but it's going to go up by some enormous amount. You hear figures like $10,000, $20,000, you know. You hear, oh, it's going to go up to $5,000 in 2 years. Well, I'm going to disappoint them there because gold doesn't have an infinite value. The reason for this is simply that we have all these techniques for mining gold, and there's a lot of gold around. It's just that we can't apply those techniques because nobody will pay the price per ounce to make those techniques valuable. When there's very little gold around that we haven't mined, then yes, the price of gold is going to go up, but it'll only go up a certain amount until it's worthwhile using some of these other techniques to mine it. To give you an idea, gold is present in seawater at around about 13 parts per trillion. So that's not a lot. I mean, you're talking about 77 tons of seawater. Where did I get that from? 77 tons of seawater would make 1 gram of gold. 2,390 tons an ounce. So you have to process a heck of a lot of seawater, and it wouldn't be worth it. It wouldn't be ecologically very good either, probably. So people don't do it. It's been tried. People have tried and failed and not made any money at it. So when the price goes up to maybe $4,000 an ounce, $5,000 an ounce, suddenly this becomes viable, and there's a heck of a lot of water in the sea. In fact, there's something like 250,000 tons of gold sitting in seawater. So, yeah, it's worthwhile. And this brings me back to a little tin hat session, because where did gold come from in the first place? We've just said that gold came from asteroids. Now, up there, we actually have an asteroid belt sitting between the Earth and Mars. We've got thousands of these asteroids. Now, surely some of them must be made of gold. We know a lot of them are made of iron, and there's been proposals to mine them in the past for their iron content, their boron content, and so on, but no one's ever made a proposal to mine them yet for their gold content. However, could it be that this is NASA's reason for wanting to capture an asteroid, put it into moon orbit, and have a look at what it's made of? Maybe they've already selected one, and selected one that they know has got a very high gold content. we know that we produce a fair amount of gold, but the demand for gold seems to far exceed the supply. Countries appear to be importing more gold when you add it all up, and you can Google this, and there's an article, or several articles actually, with the agreed amount of gold that countries are reporting as importing. They're importing far more gold than we mine, so there's a shortage of gold, and every school child knows about supply and demand. If there's a large supply and a low demand, the prices are low. If there's a high demand, as there is for gold, and the supply is low, the prices should go up. So why is the gold price the lowest that it's been for quite some time? And the answer to this is manipulation and lies. When you look at the gold figures, as we've just said, they don't add up, and nowhere do they add up less than in the world of bullion banks. This takes us into a little thing called fractional accounting. Now, fractional accounting is something that's been used by banks for a very long time. For, I think, over a century now, banks have been allowed by the governments to lend 10 times what they get from you. In other words, although they say you deposit your money in the bank, you don't, you give it to them, you look at the terms and conditions. You give your money to the bank, you give them £1,000, the bank is then allowed to lend out 10,000. So you ask yourself, where does the extra 9,000 come from? The bank makes it up. Yes, it does. And that is exactly what happens. I used to disbelieve this myself, but since then I've read enough economics books that hint at it, and talked to an actual banker who's now a friend of mine, and he says yes, that's exactly what happens. They just put the numbers on a piece of paper or into a computer, and lo and behold, there it is. Money creation. Well, really, because the money's not really created until you pay it back, but that's a rather weird idea, and only bankers seem to be able to get their head around that one. Now, bullion banks, they have an even better trick than that. Recently, over the last 10 years I think it is, bullion banks have been allowed to act as if they own 100 times the amount of gold that's deposited. So you deposit your gold in a bullion bank, and you sign a thing called a lease agreement, which allows the bank to lease out your gold. And they are allowed to lease out 100 ounces of gold for every ounce you give them. And of course this relies on the same thing as the physical bank's 10 times multiplier does, that not everyone is going to want it back at the same time, are they? Well, that's starting to break down, just as we'll see. But these bullion banks, the way they first got started with this, is they used to charge. Obviously they provide you with security, there's insurance, and other things that are involved in holding large amounts of gold for people, and that's not free, so they charge, and they charge quite high fees too. So you've got your bank, you've got your gold with bullion bank, and along comes this nice little chap and he says, you know, you don't have to give us your $220,000 a month to hold your gold. We'll hold it for free if you'll sign this bit of paper. And he waves a lease contract at them and he says, of course the gold is still yours. It's never going to leave the vault. We just lease it out. We just allow people to speculate with it. And you think to yourself, well, okay then, I can still get my gold back. you sign your bit of paper, you give it to JP Morgan or the Fed or whoever you got your gold with, and you think no more of it. Until, like Germany, you want your gold back. Now, Germany had something like 300 tons of gold on deposit in France and the US, with 45 tons or so in France, and the rest of it deposited with the Fed. Germany decided, for political reasons, that it wanted all of its gold repatriated, so it goes to France and it says, "Can we have a gold back, please, Pierre?" And the French says, "Ah, yes, you can have your gold back, no problem, except for this 6 or 7 tons," because they had it leased out at the time. So they gave the French back, they gave the Germans back 39 tons of gold. Germans very happy. So the next thing they do is they go to America and they say to the Fed, "We want our gold back, please." And the Fed says, "No, go away." Well, needless to say, the Germans weren't very happy with this. So an arrangement was eventually thrashed out after this political wrangling and intervention all over the place, and the Americans eventually promised that the Germans could have their gold back over 7 years. The idea was that every year on a certain anniversary, the Americans would give the Germans a certain amount of their gold back. Unfortunately, the Germans didn't actually specify which percentages per year. You can possibly guess the rest. They were expecting something like 1/7 of what was in the States the first year, which would have been something like 40 tons. What did they get? The Americans sent them 5 tons of gold. But it was worse than that, because the gold the Americans sent them wasn't the gold that they'd deposited. Now, this leasing arrangement was supposed to be that your gold stays in the vault. Not that we'll replace your gold with some other gold at some time in the future. Don't worry about it, Fritz. No, it was supposed to be you get your gold back, not somebody else's gold, not some gold that they've just mined in California or Alaska or someplace. So the Germans weren't very happy with this, needless to say, and they turned round to the Fed and said, "Well, if you can't give us our gold back, can we at least see it? Because under the terms of the contract, the Germans' gold should have been just sitting there in the vault. Nothing to stop them seeing it, you would have thought." And the Americans turned around and said, "No, it's secret, you can't see it. Go away." And that's where we stood on. The Germans still haven't seen their gold. They've got no idea how much gold they're going to get next year. The Americans won't tell them, possibly because the Americans haven't got it. They might have sold it to China. Because this is what happens, you see, when you have 100 to 1 ratios of anything. If people decide they've got a contract for 400 tons of gold, and they want it in physical gold, and your contract says you have to pay them, then you've got to take that gold out of your vault. If it's somebody else's, hard luck. Now that's not what should happen, but it's what has happened by the looks of it. So this 100 to 1 business is how the price manipulation has been done. The demand for gold, people have been assuaged into taking paper gold rather than physical gold. Unfortunately, what a lot of them haven't realised yet is that the paper gold is 90% non-existent. Doesn't exist. So at the moment the price of gold is based on there being something like 10 times as much gold in the market as there actually is. So that gives you an idea that the price of gold should be one heck of a lot higher than it is at the moment. And sure enough, that's why all the pundits say that it should be higher. Now, how high will it go? Well, as I said, we don't really know. I mean, in terms of today's values, where $2 buys a loaf of bread, roughly. In terms of that value, then $4,200 seems to be the ceiling because of the alternative mining techniques. But if the dollar was to sink, so that it takes, say, $100 to buy a loaf of bread, then the value of gold could shoot up to $400,000 an ounce. No trouble. Or even higher, who knows? And that's in